Welcome back to the city that never sleeps. I'm still in New York City and very excited to speak with Leon Adams, founder of Cellini, of how he managed to keep on the ultimate destination list his watch store. So I'm back with you, Leon, after hearing a lot of things about how you got to create Cellini and how the company has evolved over time, the different stores and brands that you had. But let me ask you one thing. You've never carried Rolex and Patek, and yet you've brought into the American market and your clients products they've never seen before, brands they've never heard of. What was your strategy, if there was any, into creating this little beautiful bubble of your own?
Well, I think that the fact that we didn't have Rolex or Patek really prompted us to find other ways of doing business here in the United States. And one of the things that we prided ourselves on is we tried to bring in brands that our competitors didn't carry or were not located in our marketplace. And early on, we found brands such as Breitling or Franck Muller.
Crazy when you think, because Breitling is so associated to the US. It's thanks to you, basically,
well,
that
it was
Breitling
not.
is here.
It was not here. And in the early days, Breitling, we brought it in, and it was a phenomenal brand. Our competitors across the street didn't carry the brand, and it was kind of like our Rolex because it was a men's bracelet brand for the most part. There were a lot of metal bracelets available, and Rolex basically owned that metal bracelet category, and there was very little in competition with them. So Breitling gave us an item that we could possibly compete with Rolex on. We were then brought, somebody came to us with the Franck Muller line, and that was early on. We looked at it, we loved the color dials, the shape of the case, and we did phenomenal with it. I mean, the brand for ladies took off. The ladies' quartz diamond pieces, we were buying them 24 at a time. That's how fast they were selling.
And you're talking, timeline-wise, you're talking the 80s, early 90s? Okay.
Late 80s, early 90s. We then brought in a Lange Söhne, for example. This was a high-end brand. It was the first for us to bring in something that was a non-Swiss product. And when I met Günter Blümlein for the first time, I was very impressed with his approach to the brand, being a German national, running Jägerle Culture and IWC at the time. He really was a proud German and wanted to show the world that the German watchmaking was as good, if not better, than Swiss watchmaking. And we brought the line into this country. And again, it took some education. It took us a lot of promotion, a lot of advertising, a lot of educating our customers about the product and why they should buy something like this. And as you know the story, it's a phenomenal brand. Still, the brand is a great product line.
And from the other one, because you did bring Breitling, Lange, but also Panerai, and these brands, you don't have them anymore. Besides Franck Muller, which you do.
Well, what happened was, I think that a lot of the brands, a lot of the companies opened their boutiques here in New York City. Obviously, if you're going to open a boutique in the United States, you're looking at Los Angeles, you're looking at New York. Major markets is the first places these boutiques would open a shop.
Because they saw you were doing so great that they decided
Well,
to...
I don't know. I don't know what their reason was. I guess if they wanted to have a foothold somewhere, New York was one of the places that they should have a boutique. It's New York, Paris, London, it goes in that vein. And, we existed with the boutiques for a while, and then as time went on, it became a little more challenging, a little more difficult, and they made it pretty difficult for us to continue or acquire what we were supposed to be receiving. And eventually, we were either closed or decided no longer to continue business with those companies.
And that's how you played, and then you brought in François Journe, you brought in de Bethune, and that's when it's more like the independent side of things that
the independent side was, I think, out of necessity. we looked at different brands and we wanted to be different. We always wanted Cellini to have different jewelry, different watch products than the normal jewelers. Most of the jewelers in the country carry the Rolex and the Patek and the Cartier lines and the big brands and the Omegas of the world. And we were always trying to be just a little bit different and take some chances. And that's why we did bring in things like Bethune and in the beginning Journe many years earlier. And it just, the brands did okay. They didn't fly off the shelves by no means. It did take education. It did take nurturing our clientele to these brands. But you can see what happened and how these brands are doing today.
But I mean, to some extent, and I've always heard when people speak highly of you that you're a man with flair. The same way, to some extent, that my dad had a lot of flair, and you are very similar in so many ways. But what did you, I mean, obviously it's a gut feeling, so sometimes it can be actually hard to describe, but how did you think when you first saw the Breitling, the Panerai, the Bethune, I need to bring this to I need to show it to my clients because
Well, just to be
there's
clear,
no rationality.
right.
But
No, there's no rationale. I think that, like your father, you need to be a ram and not a sheep. You have to take chances, and you have to bring in something that's different and difficult, and that's what's going to set you apart. And I think that your father, as well as me, we've always delved in. And by the way, not everything is a success.
Of course
I
not.
mean, we have a safe full of mistakes as well. So not everything that we brought in was successful, although we did try to make everything work. But some brands, whether we carried and they obviously folded or went out of business, or for the lack of new products faded off the face of the earth, there were those also that we did business with. So not everything was glorious, I should say.
And now fast forward, if you think 2024, I want to say it's very early on 2024, but if we say 23, 24, if you were to name 2 or 3 brands that you feel good about bringing them, nurturing them, educating your clients, new brands
that I don't carry?
That you have just started carrying or that you don't carry yet?
Well, new brands that I like, there's a couple of very fine independents out of Switzerland, out of France that I'm very intrigued by. Unfortunately, these watchmakers don't have enough product to go out to the authorized dealer network, and they're doing business directly with consumers at this point because their production is so low. We ran into this problem with Lange Söhne, for example. When I first sat down with Lange Söhne, they didn't have enough product to make it commercially viable for us to be a retailer. I mean, if they're telling you we can give you 4 watches a year, it doesn't make sense. So until they were able to get their production up, which took a couple of years, and that's when we decided it was viable to bring them in. I'm hoping that happens with these other 2 that I'm considering right now. As far as the existing brands, I think that Romain Gaultier is a phenomenal watchmaker. I think he is, his fit, his finish of his product is second to none. He's been very successful with the C, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I also really like, at a different price point, the Ferdinand Berthoud's. I think that Mr. Schäufele has done an unbelievable job with that company. I think the product is, again, exceptionally finished. And what I really like about them is everything is done in small quantities. So unlike some of the other brands which just make a product and keep it in the line for years, they come out and they say, okay, we're going to make 25 of this movement or 30 of that, and that's it. Once they're done, they're done. So I think that's a very special brand as well. But there's a lot of very special brands out there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, talking about the numbers of movements that are being done, it's also the new strategy of Groupe Force. It's part of those brands who have changed and evolved and changed management. So we've seen a lot of up and downs, and now they're in the path where they want to create something better, smaller, more reliable, to something more steady over time.
Well, I think in Grubel and Forsey's case, it was necessary to do because a brand as fine as theirs that only made 100 or 120 pieces a year never really did great on the secondary market. And I think the reason for that is that the models that Grubel and Forsey were producing were never discontinued. Things were kept in the line way too long and too many variations of a theme. And I think now Antonio Calci realizes under his leadership that they're going to be more transparent and say how many pieces they're going to make over how many years. And hopefully when they reach that point, it will be discontinued and no more will be available. Once that happens, the secondary market price will go up.
Well, I mean, the secondary market is another big topic, but what we're going to talk next is the evolution on the American market and how collectors have either evolved or changed their mind when it comes to watches. But thank you so much for this first insight, and we'll see you in a future episode.
Okay, thank you.